All right, I'm here with little Luna. In this video, we're going to go over how you can teach your dog how to stay out of the kitchen. Now, this is an example of a rule. A lot of us don't have any rules for our dogs, and as a result, they don't have any practice at self-restraint or self-control. So I define a rule as something a dog likes to do, wants to do, has the ability to do, but doesn't do without an invitation or permission. So she likes being in the kitchen or in the dining room when her family is eating here. She actually likes to get up here and get on the table and eat food if she can. So we're going to teach her to stay here. Now, when we do this, we try to teach her while we're in here. She wants to be with us. That's a motivation to be not following the rule. I also like food, and there's food, and I can smell the food. So there's too much temptation. So what we do when we're trying to teach a dog to do something, we're going to make it down into individual steps, and the dog practices that first step over and over in the easiest scenario possible. Well, is the most difficult scenario possible that the dog can achieve. So essentially an easy version. So what I'm going to ask her to do is to stay here on this carpet over here while I'm going to walk backwards in the kitchen. I'm going to probably only get 1 or 2 steps because this is a progression that's going to take some time. And that's okay. Just like human behavior, dog behavior is not achieved immediately. We have to put in a little bit of work. So it's easy work if we do it right. So I'm using tricky trainers here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her, first of all, to come to the place. So the first step would just be to teach her to come here. So I'm going to call it reservations. Reservations? Yes. Then I might invite her over here. Reservations? Yes. So I want to say the cue before the action. So I'm saying reservation, then I'm luring her here. I say yes when she's getting there to tell her that's what I wanted, and I'm giving her a treat after that. So you want to practice this. The first stage would just be to have maybe 7 to 10 treats, walk over here and tell her to come say reservations or whatever the word is the family wants to use. When she sits here, and we lure her like this. So reservations, yes, and then give her the treat. Then I might walk away that way and lure her back here. And you want to kind of lure the dog in a whole bunch of different directions. So we want to keep on at this stage until I can say reservations, so she comes and sits here because she knows that's going to get me a treat. That is the first step. So now what we're going to do, reservations, yes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my back to the camera, and you won't be able to see my face, just keep it on her. So the next step is stepping away from her. So if I take a whole step back, yes. Now, when I first started doing this, she came towards me when I did that. So what I did instead of taking a full step, I broke it down easier. I went half step, yes. So when I get back here, I say yes, then I give her the treat. And you want to practice these. I'm going to start by saying 5, but it's no arbitrary number. It's just until the dog is doing it pretty consistently. So I'd say, take a step back, yes. Are you done with treats? That's her way if she's done with treats. So eventually then I would take 2 steps backwards, come back, say yes. And if she's done with treats, I can give her a little tactile contact if that's what she likes. And so to break this down, first step is just to get her to come and stay here. Second step is to be able to take 1 full step away while she stays there. Then I come back right away, say yes, and give her that treat. I do that maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. Did you fart? Then when I've done that 5 or 6 times and she's pretty good with this, the next time I do it, I might take 2 steps backwards and then I come back and give her the reward. So what we're teaching her is if you stay here, good things are going to happen. If she gets up and comes in here, there's no reward, there's no punishment. But what we do is then we lure her back here. You got to like the reward. And I've given her a lot of treats. This is towards the end of the session. So keep this one really short, 1 or 2 minute practice sessions, and get to the point where you can walk several steps backwards, and you can film me now. And so eventually I get back here, and when I get to the point where I want to sit down, if I just go like this and sit down, that's going to be too much criteria for her. So when I want to do this, I'm going to take a step back, and then take another step back, and then I turn here, then I'm going to go back and give her that treat. And then I'm going to do that about 5 times. Okay. Then I go ahead and turn all the way this way without sitting down. And when I turn my hips and my face away from the dog, that's very normal for dogs to want to go. She's probably looking to go eat a Lego right now. But when you turn your hips and face away from the dog, that often tells the dog we're done. And so we'll come back in here. So at first when you're doing it, make sure you're keeping your hips facing this direction until you can walk back to either this position or this position. Then the next step is we turn halfway, go back to her, yes, and give her the treat. Then eventually we can turn all the way. And each one of these steps I would probably do for about 5 or 6 times in a row. And some steps might be harder than others. If you have to do it 15 times in a row before she can stay there, that's fine. But if she gets up, that's her way of saying, can you still see me? Go a little bit lower. If she gets up, she's saying, I'm not ready for that step. So eventually we get to the point where we can actually come and sit down. As soon as I sit down, I get up and I go back and give her the treat, say yes, and then give her the treat. So you're saying yes right before you get to her, then you give her the treat. Eventually I sit down and I turn my whole body here. Then I get up and I go back, say yes. Then I start increasing the duration of time. So I might sit here for 2 seconds, then get up and go give the treat, then 5 seconds. And there's no rhyme or reason as how long you have to, what intervals you are. Sometimes you can do maybe from 10 seconds to 30 seconds. But if I go to 30 seconds, I'm counting in my head, and we get to 28, she gets up, I made it too big of a move. So then I back up and maybe do it 25 seconds. The idea is that she is successful with it because I'm not getting greedy and pushing for more than she can do. The more often that you practice this, the faster your progress is. So I would practice this probably 2 or 3 times a day, but there's no food here. Nobody's eating. That makes it way too hard. Now, eventually when I get to the point where I can come and sit here for like up to a minute or two, if you can hold it with your hand, buddy, so it doesn't shake like that. There we go. If I can get to the point where I'm sitting here for a minute or two, the next stage, I might microwave a piece of roast beef. Put it here so it's hot and smelling. Go ahead. And then I might just go back now because I've added the roast beef. It's harder. So I might just go back to just doing this. Yes, and give her the treat. Because the roast beef is on the floor, on the table. So that makes it a lot more difficult. So I might go back to an easier level and help her practice that. So when I hear the smell of food, I'm still going to stay here and they're going to come back and give me a treat. And eventually it gets to the point where you have a knife and you cut the roast beef because we're going to mimic the sounds that are going to happen when we're eating a meal. And so first we just do 1 cut, we get up and go yes, and then give her the treat. Then we can do 2 cuts, 3 cuts, and so on. And eventually we might have a second person here, a third person here, and we work our way up to eventually when we're sitting here and eating a meal, she's staying right there because we went very slow. The mistake that people make is they try to do too many steps. So remember, anytime she gets up and comes towards us, that means we got greedy and pushed too much. Now, we have to be reasonable about this. This is not going to be an overnight deal, but this is very easy practice. If we practice this maybe 2 or 3 times a day for a week, 2 weeks, you should be able to get to the point where within 2 weeks where you can sit here and have meal on the table and she stays there. And now we can also do things to set her up for success. We can exercise her ahead of time. We can make sure that that we don't have the kids going crazy at the table because that's going to make it harder for her to get there. So the idea is just to only go up a small enough step. That step is small enough for her to be able to absorb it and perform the way we want. What we're hoping to have her do is practice the behavior we want, which is in this case to stay right there. And the humans are going to walk further and further away. They're going to sit down. Eventually there's smells and all this other stuff. And eventually I've been worked up to where I'm just going to sit here. It doesn't matter what they're eating. They could have Christmas dinner with like fondue and chocolate rainbows and all sorts of crazy stuff. And the dog just sits right there because sitting there is what gets me the treat. So this is a little video on how you can teach your dog boundaries and how to stay out of, and you can do the same sort of thing. This is to stay out of the dining room. Well, you can do the same thing for the kitchen. So maybe we have a little area right here. We call this one, this is reservations, or that one's called something else. So you can call it X, Y, and Z. But I like to have a fun command where it's maybe destinations that you like to go. That's Jamaica. This is Bahamas. This is, something else is over there. So that way, if you're in the kitchen and you want to leave, you say Bahamas, she knows that means to go here. If you're in here, you say kitchen or reservations, she goes there. You say Alps or whatever the word is, and she goes in that room. And that's that first step that I showed you. So you lure the dog over here. And once they get to that, you say yes. Or say Jamaica, yes. And then give them the treat. She's already done. All right, well, this is little Luna, and these are some tips on how you can establish invisible boundaries, help dogs stay out of the kitchen or behind invisible lines.